If ASUS has done this exact thing to more than 100 people and the FTC has receipts about it, that is enough for them to go after it. You know, you were showing me your phone and there was just email after email after email of people with complaints. If all those people filled out this form, 100% the FTC would do something.
ASUS has posted a second apology. It's the classic recursive apology from a corporation after its non-apology, where it's apologizing for that non-apology. So we're not going to give it the light of day. It mostly says the same stuff. There's nothing concrete or substantially different in it. It's a longer version that is less accusatory, but it basically says the same thing. So this video is not only about ASUS. We're going to be talking about how to protect yourself from getting screwed as a customer, talking about some of your consumer rights. Some of this is very US specific. Some of it is wider reaching, applies basically anywhere. We're in the US. Those are the laws that are the easiest for me to research and understand. But as far as the ASUS part, because we do want to close out that storyline, this is basically part 3. It might be the final for now. Again, we did a similar thing last year with them. So there's always room for more, especially with ASUS, and we'll see, maybe we talk to them in the future. But just to get it out there publicly, I asked ASUS if I could try to help them with their own customers, by which I meant, hey, I have an inbox full of very upset ASUS customers. I would like to help you help them. And they rejected the offer, which is cowardice, and in my opinion anyway, and in the very least, kind of shows what they think of their own customers. So anyway, what we're doing now, because this does go beyond ASUS, we can do something productive and help some of the people with all of these warranty issues in general. Maybe even get some policy passed. That's kind of one of the next things I'm starting to look into. But we have something for you all first. So we've created a warranty claim toolkit on the gamersnexus.net website. This is freely available. There are no ads on the page for any third-party services. And this web page contains some legal definitions, some explanations for our US audience to inform you of your rights, but it also contains templated replies that you can use in any region and adapt for your own warranty claims. These are written to help you get a productive and hopefully speedy response to your warranty issues with any manufacturer. And we also have guidelines on how to document your device, suggestions on how you could confirm everything in writing and seek manufacturer guidance every step of the way so they can't bullshit you out of a claim, and how to push back against rejections of valid claims if you happen to face one like we did. Our hope is that with this information, you'll have some confidence to be able to successfully push back in many common scenarios of rejection of a valid claim. And we've even pointed you towards, if you're in the US at least, a couple of laws that you can reference to maybe just get escalated to a supervisor and have it resolved. Further, we're compiling a report with the Public Interest Research Group. They were recommended to me by Louis Rossmann. Nathan Proctor from, it's pronounced PERG, will be joining us today in most of this video to talk about consumer rights. So the goal here is consumer education and just trying to help people as much as possible when the company is acting in the way that ASUS is. So we're also going to be filing that report that we are working on, which is ASUS specific, with the Federal Trade Commission. So I am going to be either personally submitting it or submitting it to the Public Interest Research Group, who will then bring it up as high as it can to the FTC. These reports are pretty powerful, so they are important. Now, for everyone in our audience who has had an ASUS warranty issue, even if you've already emailed it to us, and thank you, we have lots of them now, please also visit this genius link on the screen. It's geni.us/ASUS claim. That's just a link shortener. So geni.us/ASUS claim. And that will bring you to a Google form we've created. The goal of this is to compile evidence in a quickly referenceable and standardized way, so a form, so that we can use it going forward, such as if we want to bring any of these matters to the attention of the FTC. Before that, we brought you this video. Our limited foil Cyberskeleton V2 shirt directly helps fund our consumer advocacy and reporting efforts. It features a skeletal outline on the front comprised of PC components, PCIe slots, RGB strips, water cooling tubes and fittings, and a pump block heart. The back has a spine made of MOSFETs, inductors, and VRM components, and both sides have a shiny, brilliant gold and blue foil with an updated fit from our original artesian variant of the shirt. So if you want one and want to support us, head over to store.gamersnexus.net. This issue goes far beyond ASUS, and we'll be investigating other manufacturers as well. We've done a lot of undercover warranty investigations over the years. Intel, for example, was one of them in the past. But I have something to say to ASUS directly as we kind of close out their part of the storyline. So our objective is for ASUS to be better. And the reason I want ASUS to be better is not for ASUS, it's for the customers or our viewers. Because our really primary objective at GN is consumer focused, who typically has the least power in the whole chain of events. And if, by the way of helping consumers, ASUS also betters its own reputation, it gets some marketing, then great, everyone's happy. And ASUS, that is our goal. There is no other goal here. So if you claim to be a leader in the market, like you do, then set the example. By sales, ASUS, you are the leader in many of these markets, and no one is in a better position to support the customer than ASUS. They shouldn't feel threatened by their competitors, at least in things like motherboards. Even handhelds, they're doing pretty well compared to their competition, regardless of total market sales. So if ASUS, if you suddenly support your customers properly, then all of the manufacturers who compete with you, such as Gigabyte, ASRock, MSI, other motherboard vendors, they are going to have to follow in order to compete. That's the great thing about when the market leader does something right, everyone else is going to have to follow it to compete. Whereas if someone smaller does it, that might just give them an opportunity to leapfrog ASUS eventually and get to the top. So this can only help ASUS, and we really want you, ASUS, to set the right example. Okay, let's get into it. So we want to create a somewhat permanent referential resource for you to check for help with your warranty claims. That has basic guidelines. How do you successfully file a claim? This is assuming, of course, you have a valid claim and that it's not a scam, because companies have to plan for that too, which we can respect and understand that, but the way to plan for that, though, is not to just turn around and scam the customer instead. So there's the line to be drawn. We have the website page that's made. We're going to update that whenever we think of something new to add, some kind of advice or suggestions to post there. So that's supposed to just be there forever for you to help out, bookmark it or whatever for when you have a warranty claim in the future. Consumer rights differ between countries. As I said, our focus is mainly the US. It's the market we're in, selfishly, and it's the one I'm the most competent about in terms of having access to lawyers or people who know the laws so we can inform ourselves. So that's our main focus, but there's some generic stuff in there too for everybody. Now, this video mostly is focused on an interview with Nathan Proctor from the Public Interest Research Group, or again, PIRG, again recommended by Louis Rossmann, and it's a companion piece to our interview with attorney Vincent Augusta, where we discussed warranty laws in the US, Magnuson-Moss, the act from, I think it was the 1970s, and some consumer rights there. So you've got these two pieces where what we're trying to do, again, is really take the opportunity to provide consumer education. That is my personal objective here, because this ASUS thing, it sucks that they're doing this. It is upsetting and it's frustrating. At the same time, there's kind of a limit to how far you can get with being frustrated. And so the thing to do once you hit that limit is to try and turn it into education that can be used broadly, not just for this one instance that we've been reporting on. So that's what we're doing here today. Now, again, to reference the article, so it talks through several of these aspects. We'll leave most of them there for you to just read if you ever need it. As one example, though, we have some details on how to convert a warranty support phone call into something in writing, so everyone's on the same page that way. This is something that attorney Vincent Augusta recommended in our discussion with him, where he's talking about getting everything written down so that the manufacturer, the customer, everyone knows what's supposed to happen here. Our guide, for example, says to reaffirm with the support rep on the phone that you understand the agreement or the next steps properly, read it back to them from your notes, and then ask for their email or a general support inbox so that you can follow up, at which point you would confirm this understanding, send the notes, say just confirming that this is what we agreed upon or what the next steps are, and that allows you to get it into some form of writing. Now, of course, they could respond and disagree, but at least that's written down and you can take it from there. Now, the reason for doing all this, or the underlying principle for GN from our sort of standpoint is GN's grown enough at this point, and I've grown dissatisfied enough with how a lot of these, not all of them, but a lot of the companies handle these situations, where we're starting the process of taking our findings as far up the chain as we can. So at first it was kind of talking to lawyers about it, getting some on-camera discussion, educate the audience, and it's getting people like Nathan Proctor on today to talk about even more of the consumer rights side. But the next step that I'm starting to look at is the process of taking some of our findings for things like this ASUS claim and whatever else we may run into to lawmakers. So I've already begun that process of basically figuring out who we want to connect with on the Congress or Senate side of things, who makes the most sense to talk to. I'm sure I'll be having conversations with PIRG, with Louis Rossmann, anyone else who can point me the right direction, who has experience with it. And also I'll be contacting the Federal Trade Commission just in general. So not necessarily for ASUS, although that's an option too, but just more of a, hey, I'd like to establish a line of communication, kind of like we did with the U.S. Consumer Protection, the U.S. CPSC, which is an agency that we worked with for the NZXT cases catching on fire issue. Kind of like that, except on some of this warranty and support side of things. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now, which is because we've done this enough, we've complained enough, and the goal isn't to just complain, it's to actually get something done. And if the companies aren't going to do it themselves, then we'll find a way to make them do it. That's where we're going with it. So anyway, I want to briefly talk about 2 times specifically that we've covered where a company did exceptionally well with a warranty type issue. The reason I'm bringing these back up is because I want to set a roadmap where ASUS or just you all, anyone can look at it and say, all right, we get it. What do you want, Steve? And there's 2 examples. Arctic and Fractal both did phenomenally with their own warranty issues. They were of different severities. So quick recap, we already covered them in full. We'll link them below if you want those details. But Arctic had an issue with corrosion of one of its liquid freezer 2 series of pumps. So the previous generation, they had a serial number range, and they actually contacted us before we found out about it on our own, which is amazing already. And they said, we've found this big problem. The pumps are getting gunked up, and it's causing temperatures to be too high or feasibly could cause failure of the liquid cooler product. So they told us about it. They explained what the issue was. They, I think, gave me like some kind of, I don't know, X-ray analysis, materials analysis or whatever of the failure. And with all that detail, they then said, here's what we would like. We want everyone to know about this. And that's awesome because their feeling was they want the customer to have a good experience with the product. They would hate for anyone to have this problem and not know they can get help for it or that it's a known issue. And so they did an option where you could either send it in to get repaired or you could take a repair kit and repair it yourself. And that was great. It's handled excellently. Really professional handling of that. Fractal had an issue similar to NZXT's where it had a PCB, and I believe it was the torrent that was a poor design and could short in a way that could potentially cause it to burn or maybe even catch fire if you have the wrong conditions, just like the H1. Fractal also contacted us in advance, and they said, we have this problem. We are pulling all of the shipments of the torrent back. This is like before it was really fully hitting the market, and we're fixing all of them, and we'll send them back out again with the fixed one. So those are 2 examples. I'm not going to get into them further. We have videos on them. But the point is that companies can do stuff well, and I actually, I won't specify which one, but I spoke with one of those 2 companies after it was all said and done, and I said, so how did it work out? And they said, well, we fixed all the claims, and actually our sales increased so much that it even covered the cost of fixing everything, which is awesome because companies should be recognized and rewarded for doing the right thing like that. That is exactly how the system should work. And I hope that's encouraging for ASUS to look at this and go, maybe we need to recalculate how we view warranty claims. And if they don't, if large corporations don't, then keeping in mind that these smaller companies have the mobility and they have the motive to act in the interest of the consumers, whereas large corporations will be more calculating. And one thing that changes that calculation is laws and policy and legislation and things where now there is a potential punitive aspect to it, and that weights the outcome for the consumer. Enough of that. So closing out on the ASUS side of things specifically, if you've been affected by their warranty processes in the past, even or especially if you've emailed us, please fill in the survey we've linked. The emails are not going to be used for any kind of marketing. It is explicitly so that we can collect data in a spreadsheet, so the inbox doesn't automatically sort of spreadsheetify it, and use that to communicate with, say, the FTC and try to help explain to them what is happening in this segment of the market and try to get something done about it. For now, though, let's get into the discussion with Nathan Proctor. Remember, this can be applied to other companies. It's an educational piece, includes details on how you can get involved as well if you'd like, if this all motivates you. So let's jump over to it. Okay, so now I am joined by Nathan Proctor, and you were recommended to me by Louis Rossmann. Okay, before we get into some of the details, a little bit of your background I think would help, and kind of where you've worked, within this field.
I am the Senior National Campaign Director for the PIRG, Public Interest Research Groups Network, working on right to repair advocacy. I've been working on right to repair almost exclusively for 7 years.
Okay, so some of the campaigns you've worked on, one example you gave with the Chromebooks. Give me some hope. Give me some kind of optimism of like, what is something that has worked?
Yeah.
And what does that look like at the end?
Google is definitely a bigger company than ASUS, right? We started getting calls in like 2021, 2022 from people who are at schools who were having a lot of trouble keeping Chromebooks in use. And there's a whole slew of problems that they had. One of the big ones was that Chromebooks have an end of support date, like an automatic expiration date for the security for the security updates that they provide. And this is baked in like when they approve the build at the very start of the process. You're going to get this much time after which you won't get security updates. And the problem with that for schools is mostly they use, they need these computers to be able to connect to these secure state testing sites, as well as enterprise tools like Google Classroom, which will not work on an unsecured device. So schools are like literally, they had thousands and thousands of Chromebooks, totally working laptops. At the time where we released that report, you could go on Amazon, on Walmart, and some of these other retailers, you could buy already software expired notebooks as brand new with no disclosure that you would be totally incapable of using them on a secure platform. So we did a big thing. We told Google we were going to do it, then we did it. And there's a lot of headlines. There's a lot of pressure on Google. We kept on moving. Like we had a secondary release of like, here's all the Chromebooks you can buy that are already expired, and and eventually, there was the shareholder engagement from people who, from shareholders at Google, and eventually they just said, okay, 10 years updates, and we're going to be retroactive. We're going to cover a bunch of things that are coming off the AUE date, and that was some work, right? But it was the right thing. We had enough people engaged. Google is going to act in the best interest of Google. And if you can set up a situation where it's in Google's self-interest to do the right thing, the thing that's beneficial for us, then everybody is going to move forward. And that's how you win when you're trying to figure out how to move a big company like that. So the question for ASUS is they might view it as in their self-interest to force or to coerce or to whatever they're doing to get customers to pay for repairs they don't need. I think that one, to me, fairly plausible theory would be that they have to replace a bunch of the components in these products because they're defective, and in order to help kind of lower the costs, they're losing money on this. They're kind of trying to, not so subtly twist your arm into paying for stuff you don't need.
Right.
And they could view that as their self-interest. There's definitely a situation where it's very bad for ASUS to continue doing that or to do things like that. And so I think if you want to think about how to change ASUS's behavior, you just create the conditions where it's cheaper and better for their brand, for their company, for their their mission, what they're trying to do, to treat their customers better when it comes to warranties.
Yeah, I think even cynically, we were talking about this before we started filming, but even if you have a cynical outlook of the company only wants to make money, you can still approach it from that outlook and, okay, fine, how do we let them do that, but in a way that's better for everybody?
Right. I mean, that's why regulations and laws are so important, right? If there are no rules and that you can do anything, that means if you're ethical, if being ethical is more expensive, then if you're ethical, it puts you out of business. So that's why if you want them to behave well, we need to set the rules, and so that even the companies that want to do the right thing, they don't lose market share because they're acting kindly and being punished for it. Every company's looking at what the other companies are doing. And if like the number one most dominant company was like treating customers great, they'd all be like, hey, we should do that so that we look good. I mean, I would say the other thing that's difficult about the warranty part of the process, and this is true in right to repair broadly, is these things are typically happening after they've made their money. So like you've already bought the thing, right? You're already in the ecosystem. You've already got all these games that you paid for, and now they don't have to treat you as nice. And that's why, I mean, competition law broadly is really important so that customers have the ability to move around. But then you have to I mean, there's this thing in antitrust law called tying, which is the core of, it's a huge part of Magnuson-Moss. And the idea of tying is that if you have one purchase, if you make one purchase, you shouldn't be able to coerce the person to buying another good or service, right? So if I buy a car, it shouldn't secretly have a built-in arrangement where I have to go only to the dealership to get oil changes because there's no other way to do it. That's viewed as an anti-competitive act. The FTC has rules around tying. That is the reason why in Magnuson-Moss, the warranty law, federal warranty law, which you guys discussed in your last episode, it says you're not allowed to condition someone's warranty on exclusive use of the manufacturer's repair services or their materials, like if it uses some kind of consumable, like batteries, you can't say you have to use our batteries. But you know, ASUS has actually already been in trouble for this very thing, right? We were discussing this before, and
yeah, let's pull that up.
Let's pull this up.
So the background is I did check actually, and we covered it in a news episode briefly, but in 2018, the FTC sent, I guess what I'll describe as a cease and desist to ASUS along with several other companies. Right.
I think that's I don't know if that's the legal word, but that certainly describes what the FTC is saying to ASUS here. All right, so I'm just going to read a section of this, and I'm sure you guys can put it up on the screen here, but the FTC's Division of Marketing Practices has reviewed written warranty materials related to products offered by ASUS Tech, Computer Inc., ASUS, available on ASUS's website, asus.com, a website that markets phones, computers, and other products to consumers. Staff has concerns about certain representations your company is making regarding its warranty coverage. Staff is particularly concerned about the following elements in ASUS's written warranty. Quote, the warranty applies to firmware issues but not to any other software issues or customer-induced damages or circumstances such as, but not limited to, the product has been tampered with, repaired, and or modified by non-authorized personnel. The warranty seals have been broken or altered. And this is one of 6 letters that the FTC sent to companies, including Sony and Nintendo and Microsoft and HTC and Hyundai, that basically said you can't have these avoid if removed stickers or policies, like you're not allowed to tell people that they can't open things.
Does it seem like there's a situation where ASUS is in violation of some kind of FTC rule or regulation? Or in other words, for all of the hundreds of people in the audience who've emailed us just in the last, I don't know, year alone, it might be more than hundreds, but for them, beyond complaining about it to us, is there grounds to bring that to an FTC complaint, or what might that look like with that reportfraud.ftc.gov link?
Yeah, I don't have the authority to say it's a violation, but
right.
Yeah, I don't think it was the right thing to do, and I think I think they have some real exposure here. My sense is that the reason why you bring it to reportfraud.ftc.gov is twofold. One, the FTC that we have right now is really behind the idea that companies should follow the laws on the books, and that right to repair and the ability to fix things and to protect consumers from these kind of things is their top goal. So, the FTC in 2021 issued an updated policy statement, and they were like, yeah, we're going to go after you if you're screwing around with warranties. And that came after 2 years of investigation from the FTC, and we actually wrote a report where we went and called 50 appliance manufacturers and said, hey, we have this appliance. I was wondering if we were to do something and open it up, would that automatically void the full warranty? And 45 of the 50, either said yes, or or their warranty just totally said yes, or they basically implied that, oh yeah, 100% you can't do that. And I was like shocked, right? I remember I was working with staff who were doing these investigations, and they were like, every day they were like, I can't believe these, I just read the law, and then I call the company, and they're just like, oh yep, nope, that law
doesn't apply to us.
Yeah, and so I think it's been a while since the FTC had brought a case like this, and so FTC ended up doing an investigation and filing these, orders of agreement with Harley Davidson, Westinghouse, and Weber Grills for illegally violating the terms of the warranty, and they had to come up with a whole plan to not only stop doing it, but to proactively, they had to put up disclosures at their stores. And
what's the threshold? I mean, how many people realistically need to be affected and file a complaint to actually get someone's attention?
Right.
Is it thousands of people? Is it?
I don't think so. If you look at what happened for us, and when we started hearing from farmers, right, that they couldn't fix their equipment, that there was special software, and that every single time anything went wrong, the dealership technician had to drive to their farm and plug in a laptop and hit a button, and then all of a sudden everything worked again, right, for $1,200. We started hearing that story, and so we're like, okay, you hear that story colloquially, it's an anecdote, you don't know how much this happens. And then at first we had 2 or 3 people willing to go on record and talk to the media about this. And then their story, we have one person, right? And then we have a couple other people. And then by the time we had 50 people, it was obvious this thing was happening. And, I would say, and then you get past 100, it's obviously a systemic problem, right? If ASUS has done this exact thing to more than 100 people, and the FTC has receipts about it, that is enough for them to go after it.
To investigate.
And probably lower than that, but I would say you were showing me your phone and there was just email after email after email of people with complaints. If all those people filled out this form, 100% the FTC would do something.
What does that look like?
Well, so you'd have to look at what happened with, Harley Davidson as the most recent example, right? Where they would come in and say, okay, what are your processes? How do you handle these warranty claims? They have their investigators go in, they look at the process, they evaluate it, they compare it to their objective information that they've gotten from customer complaints and other testimony, and they turn the screws until they get they get all the materials. They can try to figure out have there been economic calculations about maybe if we turn away this number of repairs that we should probably cover, we'll make this much more money. That information, that the FTC has powers to investigate and to get that kind of information.
And discover.
And something that, if it really is this widespread, there's going to be communication between the executives about what to do, how this is happening, all of that. The training materials that they use for there's so much that could help the FTC evaluate. And they can really serve as an independent, body that says, what's your process? That's not good.
Does the FTC then prescribe, do they give them a prescription? Here's what you need to do, or and if you don't do it by this date, then something happens?
Yes.
Okay.
Their job is to remedy the situation, and they are experienced in doing that with companies that they don't necessarily have a huge amount of trust with. So what they would do is, they would have, kind of firm objective standards for kinds of behavior and a timeline to do it, and this is what you can see, and then they kind of come to basically an agreement with the company that de-escalates. So if ASUS tells the FTC to go kick rocks, I do not think that it's in their self-interest to do that. There's a whole set of reasons why, a very powerful FTC and an important, like probably the most important market that ASUS has, they're not going to just
throw it away.
Yeah, they're gonna. It'll be in their self-interest to resolve this with as little damage to the brand as they can possibly get, and I think it's in our interest to make sure that tipping point comes quickly. And,
right.
And then the FTC will just make sure that. Yeah, if you look at the agreement that was signed by Harley Davidson or whatever, you can see. Oh yeah, they had to do a lot. And
including apologize and list.
Yeah, I think there's disclaimers in the stores now. And we're not allowed to do this thing with warranties anymore because it was pretty widespread that they were telling customers, if you get that aftermarket equipment for your bikes. I mean, this is motorcycles. Like people, of course, have different attachments. I mean, it's like that's the whole culture. Just like gaming, it's the whole culture. Like. Oh, you were saying that for your car, you have a bike rack. You like a mountain bike, and you have a bike rack in your car, and the car maker tried to tell you that it would void your warranty to put on.
That is, I seem to be a magnet for warranty problems.
It's the hair.
Because even outside of this, when I was speaking with the manufacturer about it, they're like, "Well, that voids the warranty," and we didn't discuss how much might this hitch be carrying in terms of the capacity. It's a bike. We're talking like 20, 30 pounds or something, which seems ridiculous. Like void the entire warranty because you've bolted something into the back of the vehicle.
Right. Yeah, so. And the thing that's so frustrating about these kind of cases is it doesn't really hurt the manufacturers that much, and there's not that much risk for them to just vaguely imply or threaten or say, oh, you can't do that because of the warranty. Then it becomes a very different situation if they were like, if you did have a problem and you had a head gasket failure and they're like, oh, we're not going to fix your head gasket failure.
There's a bike rack on the back.
There's a bike rack on the back.
Oh, there's your problem.
And it avoids the warranty according to these rules that we made up for ourselves. Like that, they obviously wouldn't do that. But maybe they can talk you out of doing something that you want to do because you don't. I think people have the wrong sense of how the power dynamic works. Like they think that oh, these manufacturers hold all the cards and I'm just this little consumer and I just have to let them just smack me around.
Right.
And the truth is, we have all kinds of ways to smack them around. And if you have that attitude, no, you're not going to do that to me. That's not within your rights. The manufacturers will probably back off pretty quickly, and I think it's important for for this channel and for people people who are doing this work and educating people to remind people in this country that we have this thing, we have this society, it's a democracy. We actually set the rules, the people, and we shouldn't just give up now. We still have these every day we still have the power to organize a free society like this. We should take advantage of it because it's definitely not guaranteed. Not many people in human history have had that right, and I think it's awesome. I can make Google extend the life of Chromebooks with my friend Lucas, and that's great. That's what the world needs.
Okay, so. Any additional resources for people, places to go?
Yeah, well, I definitely encourage people to check out the Right to Repair campaign and my organization at perg.org. It's really important to have advocates that are working on your behalf to help solve these problems. I mean, that's what I do professionally. But I can only do that because people like your audience supports what we do, joins our email list, takes action with us. So I'd encourage people to take action with a group to become members of PERG and to help us to do more for the people in the country.
And as another point too, so in the past we've worked with the EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation. I forget the specifics of when we worked with them, but there was an important campaign of some kind. It may have been net neutrality. We did an interview with some people.
Yeah.
So Consumer Reports is another one. So we'll link some resources below for anyone
Awesome.
who wants to check them
Yeah.
out. And thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks so much.
We'll see you all next time.